Chapter 633. Chu Luiyue coughed. In the beginning, she had indeed experienced a lot of torture. At that time, she didn't know that it would develop to such a state. The injuries on her body hadn't healed yet. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, Chang Wanzhou's expression eased up a little. Chu Luiyue returned to Yuqi Song and the others. Everyone had excited looks on their faces. Little junior sister. So your talent as a Xian master is so outstanding? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? That's right. Meng Jing's expression was so ugly just now. Little junior brother too. How long has it been? His strength seems to have increased again? That sword of yours is really powerful. Yuqi Song looked at the two of them with a rueful expression. Although he knew that the two of them were extremely outstanding, he didn't expect them to win so quickly. It was simply a crushing defeat. His gaze swept across the cloud sky copper sword in Chang Wanzhou's hand. When he saw that there seemed to be 3 lightning-like silver patterns on the sword hilt, he was shocked. This sword seemed to be forged by Chu Luiyue and given to Chang Wanzhou. However, those 3 lines, didn't they only appear when the heavenly lightning was triggered? Suddenly, his expression froze. Could it be that the injuries on Chu Luiyue's body were caused by Tianlei? Other than that, there didn't seem to be a more reasonable explanation. But she wasn't even a rank 5 warrior now. So how could she do that? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, and he wished he could immediately pull Chu Luiyue to ask her clearly. But now was obviously not the right time. Moreover, if this guess was true, then the injuries on her body were more serious than he had expected. When Chu Luiyue saw Yuqi Song staring at the cloud sky copper sword in deep thought, she guessed that he might already know something. However, she didn't intend to hide it. Yuqi Song was experienced and knowledgeable, so it was normal for him to be able to guess it. The 9th round of the warrior competition. 9-star Alliance's Xie. The judge's voice suddenly sounded. Elder Song, have you decided who will go on stage? Yuqi Song came back to his senses and looked at the arena. A young man walked up. His figure was strong and handsome, his skin was dark, and his aura was tyrannical. He was actually also an early-stage rank 6 martial artist. A trace of doubt flashed through Yuqi Song's heart. When did the 9-star Alliance have so many rank 6 disciples? In the past, the 9-star Alliance wasn't weak and had many outstanding disciples. But it was definitely not to this extent. Such a lineup could almost be compared to Dragon Teeth Mountain's lineup. Why do I feel that in less than a year, many of the 9-star Alliance's disciples have suddenly improved by leaps and bounds? Elder Song. Seeing that Yuqi Song didn't respond for a long time, the person reminded her again. Yuqi Song frowned slightly. There were not many disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion to begin with. Apart from those who had already entered the arena, there were only a few left. Among these people, there was almost no one who could fight with Xie Lingyang. There should only be a few people in the Chongshu Pavilion who can still go on stage, right? Logically speaking, it should be easy to choose. Why hasn't Elder Song made a decision yet? Could it be that you can't choose? At this time, Zhang Hua definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity and wanted to ridicule them. If I remember correctly, Chang Wanzhou is your last rank 6 martial artist. He has already gone up just now, so you can't choose again. Elder Song, in my opinion, the remaining people, it's the same no matter who you choose. Why don't you just pick one? The disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion looked angry. Pavilion Master, I haven't gone up yet. Let me go. Me too. Even if my level isn't as good as Xie Lingyang's, we might not lose. Let's fight it out with them. Yuqi Song's gaze swept across the few of them. His heart was slightly warm, but it was also sour. These children were all good. Even though they knew that they had no chance of winning, none of them retreated. But he couldn't bear to see them being bullied. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. Master Togo. Yuqi Song looked up and widened his eyes slightly. Luyu? What did you say? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. I said, let me go up for this round. Just as Yuqi Song was about to refuse, he saw Chu Luiyue blinking and whispering. Master, don't you know best how much this disciple is capable of? Yuqi Song was stunned. The scene of Chu Luiwei swallowing the messed yuan gravel suddenly appeared in his mind. She did have an extremely powerful trump card. Among these people, if there was anyone who had the ability to fight against Xie Lingyang, then it was really Chu Luiwei. But, no buts. Chu Luiwei shook her head, with a gentle and firm smile at the corners of her eyes. I will help you and the senior brothers and sisters to protect the status of the Chongshu Pavilion. No matter what, I will never let anyone trample on the Chongshu Pavilion. Yu Qisong's heart trembled violently. After a long silence, he finally nodded. But everything, I'll leave it to you. The other disciples were also shocked. But seeing Yu Qisong's firm expression, they didn't continue to argue and just cheered for Chu Luiwei. Little junior sister, it's up to you. Little junior sister, you can do it. Just do your best. We'll wait for you to come back. Chu Luiwei smiled and nodded at everyone. Master, senior brothers and sisters, don't worry. I won't let you down. After saying that, she turned around and walked toward the middle of the arena. Seeing that it was Chu Luiwei who went up to the arena again, everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Jianghu frowned and said, Chu Luiwei has already gone up just now. Why is she here again? Chu Luiwei asked. I participated in the Xian Master competition just now. The rules of the competition are that a person can't participate in the same competition consecutively, but they didn't say that a person can't participate in several competitions at the same time, right? The judge next to him thought for a moment and nodded. There's indeed no such rule. Jianghu choked. Opportunistic. So what if they sent Chu Luiwei up? He didn't believe that a mere Stage 4 warrior could be a match for a Stage 6 warrior. Even if Chu Luiwei had the ability to fight above her level, she definitely wouldn't be able to gain any advantage against a Stage 6 warrior. Hearing this, Chu Luiwei smiled and didn't care. Who cares what he says now? Right now, he had to win the competition first. She looked at Xie Lingyang opposite her. Chongshu Pavilion's Chu Luiwei is here to accept the challenge. Xie Lingyang sized up Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei was quite famous in Xiling recently. Everyone said that she defeated a Stage 5 warrior as a Stage 3 warrior. She had outstanding talent and was extremely strong. Later on, she even won first place in the Wanzheng competition and was in the limelight. You do have some ability. Xie Lingyang spoke with a proud expression. However, Stage 6 warriors and Stage 5 warriors are completely different levels. You can defeat an early Stage 5 warrior, but you might not be able to defeat a peak Stage 5 warrior. There's a huge gap between Stage 6 and Stage 6. Sometimes, it's not a good thing for young people to be too competitive. Before he could finish speaking, Chu Luiwei suddenly waved to the 9-Star Alliance's Ning Jiqing, who was already standing on the other side and preparing to participate in the last Celestial Physician competition. The last Celestial Physician competition is also mine. Please wait for me for a while. You can start first. I'll be right there. Digression, I don't update regularly during the day. Everyone can read it together at night. These few days, it's been more than 5 chapters, so the update time is unstable. After a few days, it will return to 5 chapters, and it will be stable. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 634. Xie Lingyang's voice stopped abruptly. Ning Jiqing, who was suddenly called out, was also at a loss. What? Chu Luiwei was going to participate in the last Celestial Physician competition? In the silence, Yi Ranran could not help but ask. Pavilion Master, did you decide on this matter just now? Yu Qisong was speechless. Even he did not know that Chu Luiwei had such a plan. However, now that he had said it, he could not refute it. He could only say, Lu Yu has his own plans. Xie Lingyang was furious. He had already seen Chu Luiwei's arrogance earlier, but he did not expect it to be even worse now. Swoosh! A silver spear suddenly appeared in his hand. The spear was covered with a thin layer of green scales. A triangular snake head was carved at the end of the spear. Under the sunlight, it glowed coldly. It looked like a real green python. Green python spear. Since you're still in a hurry to participate in the Celestial Physician competition, I'll personally send you on your way. Xie Lingyang shouted. He swung the spear and stabbed it directly at Chu Luiyue. In the wind, the green python's spear let out a snake-like hiss. Hiss, a bone-chilling coldness came at him. Chu Luiyue's expression turned cold. A red whip appeared in his hand. He swung it violently. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. The red whip immediately wrapped around the green python's spear. Whoosh, the blazing flames swept out, and everywhere they passed, there was the sound of burning. The green scales on the spear suddenly stood up. It was ferocious and terrifying. Xie Lingyang clenched the spear in his hand and suddenly turned it. The sharp green scales instantly scraped past the red whip. The whip collapsed into countless flames and splashed everywhere. Xie Lingyang took a step forward. The spear went straight for Chu Luiyue's heart. Chu Luiyue immediately set up a barrier in front of him. Scales go. Xie Lingyang let out a clear cry. The countless green scales on the spear suddenly flew up. Like extremely sharp blades, they instantly enveloped Chu Luiyue. Whoosh, whoosh. Several cracks immediately appeared on the barrier. Then, it silently shattered. Xie Lingyang moved forward. Just as the sharp tip of the spear was about to pierce Chu Luiyue's chest, a red figure suddenly flashed. It quickly and nimbly landed on the spear. Xie Lingyang glanced from the corner of his eye. It was actually a furry third-grade blood ferret. Sensing Xie Lingyang's gaze, Tuanzi squatted there and suddenly grinned at him. In the next moment, it bit at the spear. The green scales on the spear, the spear, was smooth Xie Lingyang's. Tuanzi didn't worry about being pricked, so she used all her strength in this bite. Crack. 2 neat rows of teeth marks were left on the body of the spear. Xie Lingyang's heart suddenly trembled, and even his hands trembled. This was a idiot treasure. It was extremely hard. Now, it was bitten by a blood ferret? While he was in a daze, Chu Luiyue moved and disappeared on the spot. Xie Lingyang's heart sank. A cold wind came from behind. He did not have time to react and could only quickly rush forward. However, he was still a step too late. His back was cut by a sharp dagger, leaving a bloody gash. Xie Lingyang felt a sharp pain and was extremely angry. He once again circulated the force in his body. This time, he did not hold back and used all his strength. A powerful pressure spread out from his body. Beginner stage 6. The surrounding space seemed to have become heavy. Xie Lingyang said coldly, "I couldn't tell that you had some skills. But this is the end." After speaking, he suddenly turned the spear in his hand. The triangular snake head at the end suddenly pointed at Chu Luiyue. Green scales. Wake up. Vigorous force continuously poured in from the snake head. At the same time, the green scales that had flown out earlier also flew back. The originally tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A fierce and cold aura came from all directions. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, a huge green figure appeared above Xie Lingyang's head. It was a giant python covered in green scales. A pair of yellow vertical pupils were cold and indifferent, and it kept spitting out its scarlet tongue. It was a 6th-grade magical beast, the triangular green scale python. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. No wonder this spear was so strange. It was because there was such a thing sealed inside. One had to know that a 6th-grade warrior's strength was weaker than a 6th-grade magical beast. Even with Xie Lingyang's current strength, it was impossible for him to subdue this triangular green scale python. But for some reason, this magical beast was shrunk in the spear, and Xie Lingyang became the owner of this spear. Naturally, he became the owner of this triangular green scale python. "Kill it," Xie Lingyang ordered. The triangular green scale python swung its long tail and swept towards Dumpling. Dumpling's figure flashed and quickly dodged. A cold, murderous intent flashed across the triangular green scale python's eyes. It stretched out its head and spat out a cold breath. That cold breath quickly turned into thumb-sized icicles and attacked Dumpling. Everyone saw a red figure jumping around in midair. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Those icicles were all avoided by Dumpling and fell to the ground. The triangular green-scaled python gradually became impatient and finally pressed down on Tuanzi. Dumpling looked up at the huge creature approaching her. Is it for real? When the two magical beasts began to prepare for battle, Xie Lingyang looked at Chu Luiwei again. He overlapped his hands in front of him. Rays of faint blue light gradually intertwined in front of him, forming a strange pattern. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth suddenly converged towards him. A cry of surprise came from the crowd. This is an earth-rank martial skill. Looks like Xie Lingyang really doesn't intend to give Chu Luiwei any chance. Not only did he send out the triangular green-scale python, he even used a killing move. I'm afraid Chu Luiwei is going to lose this time. To be able to force Xie Lingyang to use such a method is enough to prove Chu Luiwei's strength. It's a pity. What is Chu Luiwei doing? Whoosh whoosh. A fierce wind suddenly rose. It rolled up the corner of Chu Luiwei's clothes. Her black hair flew. His black jade-like eyes were filled with unswerving determination. Facing Xie Lingyang's attack, Chu Luiwei's face showed no fear. On the contrary, she stood on the spot with a calm and indifferent expression and raised her right hand. A dot of starlight appeared on her index finger. The starlight was extremely small, but it instantly attracted the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Chu Luiwei is also using an earth-rank martial skill? Gasps could be heard from the crowd. I remember now. When Chu Luiwei first came to West Hill, she seemed to have used this move to defeat that rank 5 warrior. But she was only a rank 3 warrior at that time, and the power of that martial skill was clearly not so strong. That's for sure. Earth-rank martial skills consume a lot of force, and even a rank 6 warrior can only barely use it. Chu Luiwei is only at the peak of rank 4 now. How long had it been, and her strength had increased to such a level? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 635. Surprise flashed across Xie Lingyang's eyes when he saw that Chu Luiwei had also triggered such a phenomenon. A peak level 4 could actually use an earth-rank martial technique? Using an earth-rank martial technique required too much force. Was Chu Luiwei not worried that she would not be able to withstand it? This thought only flashed through his mind. Xie Lingyang did not think too much about it. He focused again and urged the force in his body to circulate. A faint blue seal gradually condensed in front of him. On the other side, the light on Chu Luiwei's fingertip gradually became brighter. The surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to be attracted by a strong force and rushed over. That ray of light shone on Chu Luiwei's porcelain-like face, reflecting her deep and bright eyes as if there were sparks blooming in them. Previously, she did not use the complete Jingshan finger. And this time, it was her first real attempt after comprehending the Jingshan finger. She was also very curious about how powerful the Jingshan finger could be at her current level. Just as the two people on the ground were accumulating power for their ultimate moves, the two demonic beasts in the air were also in a stalemate. It was not accurate to call it a stalemate, because the difference in size between the two figures was too great. Dumpling was only the size of one of the triangular green-scale python's eyes. The latter only needed to open its mouth to easily swallow it. Moreover, one was a level 3 while the other was a level 6. Wasn't it obvious which one would win? The triangular green-scale python stared at Dumpling in front of it, its eyes filled with anger. Logically speaking, a mere third-rank magical beast should not have been able to dodge his attack. However, this blood ferret's speed seemed to be faster than ordinary blood ferrets, and its reaction was also more agile. It attacked consecutively, but the opponent easily escaped. This made it feel embarrassed. As if feeling its anger, Tuanzi blinked its eyes and suddenly raised its claws, hooking them at Tuanzi. Come on. The triangular green-scale python's pupils instantly contracted into an extremely thin line. It instantly opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Dumpling. A strong suction force suddenly erupted. Dumpling was surrounded by a sudden gust of wind. Its body seemed to be pulled away by an invisible force. Soon, it arrived in front of the triangular green-scaled python. His sharp white teeth glowed with a cold luster. At this moment, Dumpling's figure moved, and she actually took the initiative to pounce on the triangular green-scaled python. The triangular green-scaled python was caught off guard. When it tried to stop it, it realized that the blood ferret had already landed on its head. Hiss, hiss, the green triangular python shook its head in an attempt to shake him off. However, Dumpling's claws were so sharp that they cut through the scale right above its head. The green triangular scale python suddenly let out a painful hiss. That was the most important and also the most fragile scale on its body, triangular scale armor. Its body began to twist crazily. Dumpling clung tightly to the broken triangular scale. It refused to come down no matter what. Sensing the increasing pain on its head, the green triangular scale python became anxious. It steeled its heart and directly swung its tail at Dumpling. Dumpling lifted her head and immediately pulled out the triangular scale. The green triangular scale python's body trembled in pain, and fresh blood splattered everywhere. Dumpling retreated without hesitation. But a muffled sound was heard. The green triangular scale python had ruthlessly swung its tail at its own head. In its shock and anger, it had lost control of its strength, and this hit was extremely vicious. Its head, which was already injured, became even worse. Stars appeared in front of its eyes, and it almost fainted. Dumpling was not far away, hovering in the air. Her claws were still holding onto a bloodied scale that was even bigger than her body. There was not a single injury on her body. This scene was truly too strange, to the extent that all the spectators fell silent in unison with strange expressions on their faces. These days, third-grade blood ferrets had become so strong? Dumpling looked disdainfully at the scale in her claws. Although the green triangular scale python was a sixth-grade magical beast, its intelligence was not high. It only had brute force. Sigh, it was really not a challenge. She grabbed the scale with both claws, and under the green triangular scale python's horrified gaze, she twisted it. Crack! That scale instantly broke into two halves. The green triangular scale python let out a mournful roar. The scales on its body actually started to fade rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the original green color had already turned into a grayish-white color. Everyone was dumbfounded. Below, Xie Lingyang seemed to have sensed something, and he suddenly looked up. When he saw the green triangular scale python's current appearance, the color on his face instantly faded. How could this be? The green triangular scale python's body writhed in pain in midair. Gradually, that layer of grayish-white scales actually started to peel off its body. It was actually being forced to shed its skin. The most praiseworthy part of the green triangular scale python's body was its tough, armor-like scales. But it had a fatal weakness, and that was the triangular scale on the top of its head. Once it was damaged, the scales on its entire body would be damaged as well, causing it to shed its skin. After shedding its skin, it would need at least a month's time to grow scales as tough as before. In other words, the green triangular scale python had basically lost its ability to fight now. Dumpling flew back to Chu Luiwei, wagging her tail as if asking for credit. Chu Luiwei glanced at it with a smile. This little thing's ability seemed to have improved. Just now, she only gave it a warning, and it attacked so steadily, accurately, and ruthlessly. It did not even give the other party any chance to retaliate. On the opposite side, Xie Lingyang's face turned green. When he saw the green triangular scale python being summoned back, his anger almost gushed out like magma. Chu Luiwei was too much of a bully. He growled, and the blue talisman in front of him silently flew out. 9 soul-capturing talisman. That talisman grew with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had already expanded to the height of a person. Blue light flickered on it. It was bizarre and variegated. The pressure was heavy. Chu Luiwei's right hand gently pointed forward. Jingshan finger. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 636. With Chu Luiwei as the center, a speck of starlight rapidly bloomed. The space around her seemed to be squeezed by a great force and began to ripple uneasily. On the opposite side, The blue talisman seemed to have sensed the terrifying aura and gradually slowed down. Xie Lingyang's smug smile had not fully formed when it completely froze. His 9 soul-capturing talisman seemed to be afraid of something. Chu Yuyue's red lips moved slightly. Condense! Countless starlight rapidly gathered and condensed into a silver finger with flowing brilliance. Then, the finger approached the 9 soul-capturing talisman at a slow and steady speed. Xie Lingyang gritted his teeth and injected another stream of force. Boom! The forces of both sides finally collided fiercely. Light scattered everywhere. A crack suddenly appeared on the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Then, a blue stream of light was quickly thrown out like a rope. Then, it tightly wrapped around the silver finger. Then a second one. A third one. A 9th one. On the 9 soul-capturing talisman, 9 black ropes wrapped around each other and tightly bound the finger, and began to tighten continuously. Seeing that the silver finger was completely bound, Xie Lingyang finally heaved a sigh of relief. As long as, bang, one of the ropes suddenly broke. Xie Lingyang's heart jumped again. The finger moved slightly and easily broke free from one of the ropes. Then a second one. Bang, 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 bang. Almost without any pause, the ropes broke one after another. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. Before Xie Lingyang could react, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. In order to use the 9 soul-capturing talisman, he had used up all the force in his body. Now that the talisman was destroyed, he naturally suffered a backlash. It was as if countless sharp arrows were crazily running back and forth in his body, almost smashing his internal organs. As the ropes broke one by one, more and more cracks appeared on the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Bang bang. In the blink of an eye, there was only one rope left out of the 9 ropes. It was on the verge of collapse. On the other hand, Chu Luwei was calm and unharmed. The difference between the two was obvious. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Chu Luwei had the upper hand in this battle. My God, not only did Chu Luwei use an Earth-grade martial skill, but it seems to be even stronger than Xie Lingyang's. I think she's bound to win this match. I really didn't expect her to have such a trump card. No wonder she insisted on fighting herself. If Chong Su Cabinet wins this round, both parties can be considered to be on par. Xie Lingyang's actually not weak, he's strong, but he's as of him. Meeting Chu Luwei this time was like kicking an iron plate. A rank 6 warrior losing to a peak rank 4 warrior. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, no one would believe it. Zhang's is of him of a person. Xie Lingyang Feng to Yang to the talisman to hims of AA of the two to be. The members of the 9-star alliance also quietened down, not daring to make a sound. They were afraid that they would provoke the alliance leader and bring trouble to themselves. Xie Lingyang felt uneasy under the gazes of countless people. He inadvertently looked up and saw Zhang Hua looking at him with a cold gaze. He instantly remembered that before he went on stage, Zhang Hua had given him a death order. He could only win, not lose. If he really lost to Chulu, Xie Lingyang seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shuddered. Then, as if he had finally decided on something, he swallowed the blood in his mouth and fiercely bit his index finger. A dark red bead of blood quickly gushed out. With a flick of his finger, the blood bead quickly flew onto the 9 soul-capturing talisman. It was like a drop of ink suddenly falling into water. The dark blue talisman began to turn blood red at a speed visible to the naked eye. The previous cracks were repaired in the blink of an eye, and the entire talisman became more solid. The thick smell of blood instantly filled the air. At the same time, a terrifying aura seemed to be gushing out from the depths of the talisman. The last remaining rope also turned blood red, and several more ropes spread out from it, once again wrapping around that finger. Silver and blood intertwined and fought crazily. Boom! At this moment, Xie Lingyang's aura suddenly began to skyrocket. Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong with Xie Lingyang. That blood bead just now, it wasn't that there were no cultivation methods that could temporarily raise one's cultivation level, but Xie Lingyang's was too strange. It exuded a cold and sinister aura that made people shudder. The wind whistled. Vaguely, there seemed to be wailing and moaning coming from the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Soon, Xie Lingyang's strength rose to the middle of stage 6. For a powerhouse of this level, the difference in strength between each small level was huge. Chu Luiwei was already at a disadvantage because she was fighting above her level. Now that Xie Lingyang had used a special method to raise his level, it was even more disadvantageous for Chu Luiwei. Xie Lingyang's eyes were bloodshot and filled with crazy killing intent. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. Soul devouring! Xie Lingyang bellowed. The wind howled, and the 9 soul-capturing talismans suddenly spun. As the talisman spun, the blood-colored rope on it also began to strangle the silver finger. Crack! A crack instantly appeared on the wall. Chu Luiwei's body trembled. Her mouth was filled with a sweet and fishy taste. She swallowed that mouthful of blood. At this moment, half of the finger had already been devoured by the 9 soul-capturing talisman. It was about to disappear completely. A wild smile appeared on Xie Lingyang's face. You've lost. Chu Luiwei gritted her teeth, and a hint of madness flashed across her face. It's not certain who will win yet. Xie Lingyang sneered disdainfully. You're still so stubborn when you're about to die. It's not too late for you to admit defeat now. Otherwise, it'll be useless even if you kneel down and beg me later. Chu Luiwei didn't say anything. The water droplet in her dantian suddenly rippled. She raised her hand, boom. A vast aura surged out. Xie Lingyang's expression suddenly froze. The light on Chu Luiwei's index finger, which was as weak as a candle in the wind, suddenly shone brightly. Then, a star separated from it and gently fell on the finger next to it. Stun God Palm. Digression. Have a meal and continue to update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 637. The star-like light was bright, sacred, and powerful. It bloomed and spread silently. The half of the finger that was about to disappear suddenly turned into a palm print. Then, the palm print gently fell on the 9 soul-catching talisman. Buzz. A buzzing sound rose into the air. The 9 soul-catching talisman melted quickly like snow in early spring. The liquid in the blood-colored rope quickly evaporated and became dry and weak. Then, it scattered with the wind. Xie Lingyang widened his eyes in horror and looked at the scene in disbelief. How could it be? How could it be? He had used all his strength and even raised his realm to the middle stage of the 6th stage. Why was the 9 soul-catching talisman so vulnerable in front of Chu Luiwei? What was the origin of her martial skill? While he was in shock, the 9 soul-catching talisman completely melted. There was only a faint smell of blood left in the air. Except for the palm print full of sacred and majestic power, there was nothing else. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth seemed to be appeased and gradually calmed down. It was as if nothing had happened. Xie Lingyang spat out another mouthful of blood and knelt on the ground with an ashen face. The aura on his body weakened rapidly and soon fell back to the early stage of the 6th stage. Gradually, blood seeped out from all parts of his body. It was very scary. Chu Luiwei raised her hand and the palm print disappeared instantly. As the light circulated, black spatial cracks appeared in the surroundings. The nearby space was collapsing under the pressure of the remaining power. After this fierce battle, the force in her body was almost exhausted and her lips were a little pale. But other than that, there was nothing strange about her face. Compared to the extremely miserable Xie Lingyang, she was much better. Chu Luiwei sighed softly. In fact, even she didn't expect the power of the stupefying palm to be so strong. At least it was several times stronger than the stupefying finger. Moreover, she had only cultivated half of the stupefying palm. If she could fully display it, she might be able to move mountains and fill seas. Chu Luiwei suppressed his emotions and looked at Xie Lingyang. The 9 soul-subduing talisman had almost exhausted all of his origin power. Moreover, it was very strange that he had sacrificed that blood bead in the end and forcefully raised his cultivation. Perhaps it was because of this that he suffered an even more terrifying backlash. One didn't need to look carefully to realize how miserable his current situation was. His face was pale, and his body was covered in blood. He probably didn't even have the strength to stand up. Chu Luiwei raised his chin and looked at the referee at the edge of the field. So, I've won. At this time, Judge was still immersed in shock. Hearing Chu Luiwei's voice, he finally came back to his senses. His neck was almost stiff as he nodded. Forget it. He paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, Mystic Master Competition Round 9. Chongshu Pavilion's Chu Luiwei wins. Xie Lingyang's vision turned black, and he fainted. Zhang Hua's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. The aura on his body was frighteningly cold. After using so many methods, he couldn't even defeat Chu Luiwei. A few 9-Star Alliance disciples hurriedly went forward and carried Xie Lingyang back. Apart from them, no one dared to respond. As for Chongsu Cabinet, they finally regained their senses after the initial shock. Little Junior's sister won. Lu Jiao couldn't help but jump up and punch fiercely. He accidentally pulled on his wound again, and the pain made him grimace. Yi Ran immediately supported him. Senior brother Lu, be careful. Lu Jiao couldn't hide his excitement. What's this small injury? Ran, did you see that? Little Junior's sister really won. She defeated Xie Lingyang. Yi Ran couldn't help but laugh. Of course I saw it. There were so many people present, and they all saw it clearly. Little Junior sister, well done. I knew little Junior sister could definitely do it. From today onwards, I'm going to cultivate with little Junior sister. Don't stop me. How can it be your turn? Line up, line up. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement. The suppressed emotions from before were finally vented. The competition didn't last long, but for some reason, they felt that it was very torturous, as if a long time had passed. Now that Chu Luiwei had won the competition, the joy in their hearts was indescribable. Yuchi Song's tense body finally relaxed, and the tightly clenched fists in his sleeves slowly loosened. As expected, Lu, you wouldn't disappoint. Chu Luiwei actually won. She seems to be only 15 years old this year. Is she still human? I was wrong. Previously, I thought that the rumors about her winning a few rounds were deliberately exaggerated by someone. I was really wrong. She's really powerful. Chang Wanzhou was already outstanding enough. I didn't expect Chu Luiwei to be even stronger. No wonder she could get first place in the Wanzheng competition. Chongshu Pavilion is really lucky to be able to accept these two. All sorts of discussions came from the surroundings. When Chu Luiwei heard it, she didn't take it to heart. She was going to win this competition anyway. In her opinion, this victory was completely natural. Therefore, she didn't stay for long and walked to the other side of the arena. There was still the last Celestial Physician competition. Seeing Chu Luiwei walk over, the crowd's noise quieted down and they looked at each other. She wasn't joking just now? She was really going to participate in this Celestial Physician competition? Ning Jiqing, who had been waiting in the arena for a while, frowned when he saw Chu Luiwei standing opposite him. Chu Luiwei, are you sure you want to compete with me now? She had just gone through 2 competitions, and the force in her body should be almost exhausted. If they competed now, it would be unfair to win. Chu Luiwei laughed. Of course, why else would I be here? Why aren't you moving? Didn't I say that you can start first? Such a short time wouldn't affect much. Ning Jiqing's frown deepened and he said coldly, with my strength, I don't need to take advantage of you. I can still beat you. Chu Luiwei looked at him with interest. This Ning Jiqing was also quite arrogant, but he was different from Xie Lingyang's arrogance. He was proud and aloof. Celestial Physician cultivators usually thought highly of themselves. However, this wasn't a big problem. This Ning Jiqing had been waiting here all this time, and it seemed that he had some temperament. Sorry for the long wait. Then let's start now. As Chu Luiwei spoke, she took out her medicine cauldron. Ning Jiqing didn't say anything and began to prepare all kinds of herbs. The 2 people on the arena were in the mood for the competition. Everyone watching from the sidelines had different feelings. Because the Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance had just reached a draw. The outcome of this last competition would determine the outcome of the entire competition. It would also determine who was qualified to continue to occupy the position of one of the 4 major sects. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 638. Not long ago, Jianghu Pavilion was still lagging behind. However, after Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou arrived, they quickly caught up and pulled even. Now, as long as they won one more match, Jianghu Pavilion would be able to keep their position. Everyone sighed. Who would have thought that the situation would take such a big turn? Jiao Xing Alliance, who seemed to have victory in their grasp previously, was now in danger. Zhang Hua frowned, and his gaze was like a knife. If looks could kill, Chu Luiyue would have been cut into pieces. However, Chu Luiyue had long been used to all kinds of looks, so she didn't take it to heart at all. If Zhang Hua was so angry now, wouldn't he fly into a rage when this match was over? Chu Luiyue thought silently in her heart. A sneer flashed across the corner of her lips, and she immediately slapped her hand on the medicine cauldron. A crimson flame instantly ignited. Ning Jiqing glanced over and his expression changed slightly. Chu Luiyue could actually continue to refine medicine? How much energy did she have in her body? But no matter what, he had to win this match. Xie Lingyang had already lost just now, and he probably wouldn't have an easy time when he went back. Now, all the pressure was piled on him alone. If he lost, he would only be worse off than Xie Lingyang. Thinking of this, Ning Jiqing pursed his lips and calmed himself down. He methodically put the herbs into the medicine cauldron and began to refine medicine. Time passed extremely slowly. Everyone's attention was on Chu Luiyue and Ning Jiqing. The situation here had already attracted the attention of several other sections. Jian Shai stood with his hands behind his back, looking at Chu Luiyue across the rift valley in the middle, and couldn't help but smack his lips. TSK. This last really hit her strength well. Look at how skilled she is. And her control of the fire is also good. Her talent is amazing. He didn't suppress his praise at all, so many people around him heard it clearly. Jian Fengqi had a headache and finally couldn't help but ask, "Father, you've been watching them ever since they entered the competition. On the other hand, you didn't watch the match between Dragon Teeth Mountain and Sacred Flame Palace. Which family are you from?" Jian Shai waved his hand indifferently. "What's so interesting about our competition? No matter how you compare, we still win. Besides, the matches between Chang Wanzhou and Chu Luiyue were really exciting. You'll be at a disadvantage if you don't watch." Jian Fengqi was speechless for a moment. He felt that his father had completely fallen and could not be saved. Jian Shai couldn't help but say, "Look, Chu Luiyue's alchemy skills were indeed outstanding. Do you know what level she is at now?" Jian Fengqi glanced at him and said lazily, "A 4th-grade celestial physician, right?" However, she was already able to form pills when she was a 3rd-grade celestial physician, so her actual level should be higher than this. Yes, just like her previous 2 matches. Even if she fought against someone of a higher level, she still won in the end. Wasn't this strength the reason why she relied on? Jian Shai sighed. "I guess so too. Look at her movements. Even a 5th-grade celestial physician might not be able to compare to her. When you were her age, you were far worse than this." Jian Fengqi was speechless. "I really don't know what kind of luck old Song has. These 2 actually chose his Jianghu Pavilion." Jian Shai said enviously. At first, he wanted Chu Luiyue to come to Dragon Teeth Mountain. On one hand, he liked her talent, but more importantly, it was because of his son. But now, he finally realized how great of a loss this was. One was Chang Wanzhou, the other was Chu Luiyue. It was really enviable. Jian Fengqi said coldly, "You don't plan to watch Snapper's competition?" This sentence finally made Jian Shai react. He quickly looked back. "What? It's Snapper's turn?" When he looked back, he saw Mu Hongyu flash behind her opponent and quickly throw a punch. Victory! The faint Yuan body did indeed have a strong advantage. Ordinary cultivators could not compare at all. Mu Hongyu won this round easily and smoothly. After the competition, She directly left the arena and walked quickly toward Jian Shai and his son. "Young master, how's the situation on Lu Yu's side?" she asked anxiously as she walked. When Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou went on stage together, she originally wanted to watch the battle. However, it happened to be her turn, so she was delayed. Jian Fengqi briefly explained the situation to her. Mu Hongyu's almond-shaped eyes lit up when she heard it, and her face was full of excitement. "I knew it. I knew she could do it. When Chu Luiyue was in the academy, when had she ever lost? It was the same now." Jian Fengqi's lips curled up slightly, looking lazy and evil. "You have a lot of confidence in her." "Of course." Mu Hongyu took a few more steps forward, wanting to see more clearly. "The Nine-Star Alliance is bound to lose against Lu Yu this time. I've never seen Lu Yu lose to anyone." Jian Shai asked with interest. "Snapper, do you know when Chu Luiyue started to cultivate as a celestial physician? Who is her master?" He could ignore everything else, but he really wanted to know this. To be able to have a disciple like Chu Luiyue, it was enough to show how powerful her master was. After all, the cultivation of a celestial physician required a master's careful guidance to a large extent. Mu Hongyu thought for a moment and said, I think she just passed her 14th birthday. It's been less than a year since then. Her master is the dean of our academy. I heard that Lu Yu was already the dean's student before she entered the academy. It's just that I don't know when that happened." Jian Shai was stunned. "You mean, she cultivated as a celestial physician for less than a year? How is that possible?" Mu Hongyu thought for a moment and said, "I'm not sure if she started cultivating as a celestial physician very early on, but I'm sure that before her 14th birthday, her Yuan meridian was still incomplete. At that time, she definitely didn't cultivate as a warrior." Thinking about it carefully, Chu Luiyue seemed to have turned from a good-for-nothing to a genius overnight. Jian Shai sucked in a breath of cold air and immediately regretted it. He clutched his heart and said, "I should have snatched her from Elder Song back then." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 639. Jian Shai was still regretting it. Chu Luiyue, on the other hand, was completely unaware of this. She was focused on processing the pills in the cauldron in front of her. She was now a 4th-grade celestial physician, while Ning Jiqing was a 5th grade. If she wanted to win this competition, she had to refine a 5th-grade pill. Fortunately, she had already made her choice when she went on stage. Moreover, there were indeed sufficient medicinal herbs in her universe ring. Well, speaking of which, she had to thank Rong Xiu. If he hadn't given her this universe ring, she might not have been willing to buy so many medicinal herbs at once. She methodically put the medicinal herbs in one by one and divided the flames in the cauldron into several parts to refine them individually. Ning Jiqing was also processing the medicinal herbs at this moment. He took the time to look up at her. When he saw that her cauldron was divided into 5 areas, he was slightly shocked. Generally speaking, only a 5th-grade celestial physician could do this. However, Chu Luiyue seemed to be doing it with ease, as if it was effortless. A trace of doubt flashed across Ning Jiqing's heart. Was she really only a 4th-grade celestial physician? "Pavilion Master, what kind of pill is little junior sister planning to refine?" Lu Xiao watched for a while. He only saw Chu Luiyue continuously throwing medicinal herbs into the cauldron, but he couldn't tell what she was going to do. Yuqi Song stroked his beard and muttered, "She's determined to win." Lu Xiao was confused. Yuqi Song glanced at Yi Ranran. "Ranran, do you see anything?" Yi Ranran thought for a moment and said, "It looks like she's going to refine a low-grade 5th-grade purple sun pill." Yuqi Song nodded in satisfaction. "You guessed right." Yi Ranran's talent as a celestial physician was indeed better than many people. That was why he could guess the results so keenly. Lu Xiao was shocked. "A 5th-grade pill? Isn't Junior's sister a 4th-grade celestial physician? If she were to concoct a grade 4 pill, she basically has no chance of success. That's why she took the risk and tried to concoct a grade 5 pill." Yuqi Song sighed inwardly. This was the reason why he had said those words earlier. Can junior sister succeed? Although little junior sister was outstanding in all aspects, celestial physician refining medicine was different from the other two types of cultivation. In the Xian master competition, she might be able to rely on luck. In a martial artist competition, they could also fight with their lives on the line. However, a celestial physician could only rely on pure strength. Because the process of refining pills was very complicated, the higher the grade of the pill, the more troublesome it was to refine. Not only did he have to process many medicinal herbs, he also had to pay attention to many minute details. If he was not careful, all his efforts would be wasted. During this process, he could not afford to be distracted for even a moment. Regardless of whether it was the method of refining medicine or the control of the flame, there was an extremely precise requirement. Chu Luiyue, was it really possible for her to forcefully refine a grade 5 medicinal pill? Yi Ranran said in a serious tone. Senior brother Lu, I think Lu you can do it. I think Lu Yu's movements are much more skillful than mine. Actually, this was also what Yuchi-song was thinking. He looked at Chu Luiyue and saw that she clearly had many years of experience in refining medicine. She was very skilled. This was not something that could be explained by talent alone. Perhaps, the teacher she followed in the past was not an ordinary person? Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, it was already evening. The orange-red setting sun was like a blazing fireball, coating the clouds in the sky with a layer of warm color. At this time, Chu Luiyue had finally finished processing the hundreds of medicinal herbs. The next thing to do was to refine the pill. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated, licking her pale and cracked lips. Based on her current strength, it was not that easy to refine a grade 5 medicinal pill. Therefore, she had to be very, very careful. Moreover, with her current strength, she could only refine it once. There would not be a second chance. She carefully fused the medicinal herbs in the cauldron bit by bit. Opposite her, Ning Jiqing noticed Chu Luiyue's movements and could not help but raise his head to take a look. When he saw that the flames in Chu Luiyue's cauldron had gathered together again, he could not help but frown again. Chu Luiyue had actually started to refine the pill before him. He glanced at his cauldron. There were still a few medicinal herbs that had not been processed properly. This was like a resounding slap to his face. He tried his best to control his emotions and kept comforting himself in his heart. Perhaps Chu Luiyue was blindly greedy and neglected many things? The biggest taboo in refining medicine was to be impatient for success. It did not matter if he was a little slower, as long as he was the winner in the end. Thinking of this, he gradually calmed down and quickly finished processing the remaining medicinal herbs. Then he finally started to refine the pill. Chu Luiyue carefully fused the medicinal herbs. Although she had refined the purple sun pill many times in the past and had memorized the entire process by heart, but when it came to refining pills, she never had 100% confidence. Especially now that her strength was not enough, she had to be more careful. She stared at it and added a green liquid into it. Swish, an ear-piercing sound was suddenly heard. The cyan liquid began to emit white smoke. Not good. This medicinal herb was going to be ruined. More importantly, this was the critical moment of refining the pill. This time, she was afraid that the medicinal herbs next to it would be destroyed as well. Chu Luiyue immediately separated a red flame and wanted to separate the green liquid. As a result, the liquid burned even more fiercely when it touched it. A burning smell wafted in the air. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Digression, go to sleep tomorrow at noon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 640. Not good. Lu Yu's green frost fruit is going to be ruined. Yi Ranran exclaimed in a low voice and covered his mouth. His eyes were filled with worry. Most of the senior brothers and sisters around him were also celestial physicians. When they saw this situation, they naturally understood what it meant. Their faces were filled with worry. Lu Xiao couldn't help but say, could it be that junior sister is too anxious? If this medicine was ruined, it was very likely that it would lead to the failure of the entire pill formation. Yu Qisong's brows were tightly knitted. He clearly saw that Chu Luiyue had failed because of a moment of carelessness. The green frost fruit was cold in nature. It couldn't be refined with flames that were too hot. The requirements for the fire were extremely high. Sometimes, even a real 5th-grade celestial physician might not be able to do it perfectly. In the beginning, Chu Luiyue was doing well. Just now, she lost control for a moment and ended up like this. The 2 previous matches had indeed consumed too much of her force and energy. Now that she was trying to refine a pill, it was already extremely difficult. However, she still wanted to refine a 5th-grade pill that exceeded her own realm. It was already very difficult for her to hold on until now. I don't know if she'll be able to handle this crisis. The smell of burning spread. Ning Jiqing's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. The smell was coming from Chu Luiyue's medicine cauldron. He narrowed his eyes. It seemed that there was a problem with the green frost fruit. A 4th-grade celestial physician trying to refine a 5th-grade pill was already reckless, let alone the rather complicated purple sun pill. The purple sun pill was a low-grade 5th-grade pill. The herbs it needed were not many among the 5th-grade pills. Moreover, the refining time was relatively short. In other words, it consumed very little force. The previous 2 matches had already consumed a lot of Chu Luiyue's energy. It was reasonable that she would choose the purple sun pill. However, she might have forgotten one thing. Several of the herbs in the purple sun pill were extremely difficult to process. In order to refine the pill, one must have a sufficient understanding of these herbs and be skilled and precise in refining them. Otherwise, it would only end up as ashes. Ning Jiqing's lips curled into a mocking smile. With such a temperament, she would not be able to go far on the path of becoming a celestial physician. Chu Luiyue's match was probably going to end here. Chu Luiyue looked at the green liquid in the cauldron. Because of the high temperature, the edges of the juice had begun to show a dark gray color. Even if he could continue to form the pill, the final medicinal effect would be greatly reduced. Chu Luiyue's expression was calm as he lowered the temperature of the flame again. At the same time, he separated the green liquid from the other medicinal ingredients. However, a small portion of the azure frost fruit's juice had already merged into the other medicinal ingredients that were waiting to form the pill. This charred lump was obviously no longer usable. Chu Luiyue simply poured out all the black juice and threw in another green frost fruit. Seeing her actions, the onlookers were all shocked. Is Chu Luiyue crazy? She actually wants to refine another green frost fruit? But the previous lump has already been burned. It definitely can't be used. But didn't a portion of the azure frost fruit's juice already merge with the other medicinal ingredients and start to form the pill? Even if Chu Luiyue can refine another pill now, can she guarantee that it will be the same as the previous one? You have to know that the azure frost fruit is extremely delicate. If the temperature is wrong, the time is wrong, the medicinal effect will be very different. 2 azure frost fruits. If she refined them together, it would be fine. But now that she's refining them separately, I'm afraid that the medicinal effect of the final pill won't be as pure. Those who had a little understanding of celestial physician disagreed with Chu Luiyue's actions. In their opinion, Chu Luiyue's half of the pill had already been destroyed and there was no way to make up for it. If she were to start over now, there would be more hope for her to refine a perfect purple sun pill. But obviously, she did not have the energy. Lu Yu actually wants to refine the azure frost fruit again. Yi Ranran's eyes were fixed on the situation on the field. His hands were clasped in front of him as if he was praying for something. Suddenly, her expression froze and her eyes widened in shock. "Oh no." Lu Xiao hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Ranran pointed at Chu Luiyue on the field and stammered, Lu Yu wants to remove the portion of the azure frost fruit's juice that has already merged with the other medicinal ingredients." Lu Xiao was instantly stunned. What? Although his talent as a celestial physician wasn't as good as Yi Ranran's, he still understood what Yi Ranran meant. He immediately took a step forward and carefully looked at Chu Luiyue's medicinal cauldron. Within the burning crimson flames, many medicinal ingredients had already fused and formed a fist-sized ball. Taking a closer look, there was actually a flame that was flowing along the ball. Wherever the flame passed, drops of green juice would seep out of the ball and quickly evaporate. Lu Xiao was filled with shock. That was really the juice of the azure frost fruit. Chu Luiwei actually wanted to forcefully remove it from the half-formed pill. Little junior sister, are you crazy? Lu Xiao swallowed the last few words with great difficulty. However, this sentence was already written all over his face. This was the first time Yu Ran had seen such a situation. He couldn't help but look at Yu Qisong for help. Pavilion Master, Lu Yu is. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Yu Qisong's expression in a daze as if he had lost his mind. It was extremely difficult to separate the medicinal ingredients that had already merged with the half-formed pill. This was more than 10 times more difficult than processing the medicinal ingredients. This was because a portion of the medicinal strength had already begun to merge. In order to completely remove it, one had to control the flame at an absolutely exquisite temperature so that that medicinal ingredient could be separated alone and not affect the medicinal strength of the other medicinal ingredients. This was like skinning the skin and scraping the bones. There was no room for error. In fact, most celestial physicians might not be able to do this even if they refined the same pill hundreds or even thousands of times. Only the true top geniuses, who had a natural talent for medicinal herbs and refining medicine, could do so. Chu Luiwei was now refining a 5th-grade pill as a 4th-grade celestial physician. It was already very difficult, but she was actually so bold as to dare to do it so directly. Even Yu Qisong felt that this was simply too crazy. He was also a celestial physician and had cultivated for many years. However, he knew that when he was Chu Liuyue's age, he definitely didn't have the courage to do so. Although Ning Jiqing's level was higher, he might not be able to do it better than Chu Luiyue. This was a genuine talent. There might not even be one in 1,000 celestial physicians. He had seen so many celestial physicians in his life, but only 2 people had such ability. One was his martial uncle. The other was half his disciple. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 641. Chu Luiwei was doing 2 things at once. While refining the new green frost fruit, she was also removing the green frost fruit from the half-completed pill. The first part was still manageable, but the latter part was a meticulous job. Her eyes were fixed on it without blinking. She was highly focused, and fine beads of sweat kept appearing on her forehead. Her back was already drenched in cold sweat. Ning Jiqing didn't notice at first, but when he heard the noise around him, he realized that something was wrong. He was distracted and listened to a few words, but they were all about Chu Luiwei. Bang! He slapped his palms on the medicine cauldron, and the vigorous force poured into it again, and the flames rose. A pill was gradually condensing and taking shape. He heaved a sigh of relief, and only then did he look up at Chu Luiwei. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Chu Luiwei, what was she doing? He was also a talented celestial physician, so even if he only took a quick glance from a distance, he could still sense that something was wrong. His hands on the medicine cauldron trembled slightly, and huge waves were set off in his heart. Chu Luiwei actually wanted to remove the green frost fruit that had already been integrated? How much confidence did she have to dare to do this? Boom! A ball of flame suddenly went out of control. Ning Jiqing was shocked and took half a step back. Only then did he realize that his distraction had caused the flames in the medicine cauldron to go berserk. He quickly retracted his thoughts and tried his best to control the flames. Fortunately, his actions weren't slow, so it didn't cause too much damage. The pill was still in the flames, and on the surface, it didn't seem to have any effect. However, Ning Jiqing's heart sank. During the pill formation process, such an unforeseen event was taboo. That momentary loss of control just now would definitely reduce the medicinal efficacy of this medicinal pill by quite a bit. Everything was fine at first. Ning Jiqing's expression became serious. He knew that he couldn't continue to be distracted. Otherwise, this pill might not be able to be formed. He took a deep breath and stared at the pill that was shrinking in the flames, and carefully adjusted it. However, not long after, the scene that he had just seen flashed through his mind again. Chu Liyue's face was pale and his whole body was drenched in sweat. It was obvious that he was exhausted. However, her movements were smooth and natural, as if she was not affected at all. More importantly, she was indeed precisely removing the azure frost fruit juice from the pill. Although he had only taken a glance just now, he could clearly see that the pill's shape was perfect, and its color was even richer and purer. Chu Liyue was clearly about to succeed. Right at this moment, another sound resounded from the other side. Ning Jiqing couldn't help but look up. He saw Chu Liyue burning the last drop of green frost fruit from the pill. At the same time, he slowly poured in the green juice that he had just refined. The pill spun slowly and quickly turned a jade-green color. This time, the azure frost fruit had actually fused perfectly. Chu Liyue did not dare to relax. He controlled the strength of the flame and carefully allowed the medicinal herbs to completely fuse. Following that, a thick medicinal fragrance suddenly pervaded the air. Chu Liyue was overjoyed. It's done! The fragrance quickly spread in all directions. At the same time, an invisible wave erupted from the medicine cauldron. Buzz! The medicine cauldron vibrated. A clear and bright purple pattern slowly appeared on the surface of the green elixir. This movement, is Chu Liyue about to succeed? Someone in the quiet crowd suddenly spoke. The pill has already been formed. The medicinal fragrance is so rich. It must be done. Looks like it's really a 5th-grade pill. How did he do it just now? How come I've never heard that a pill that has already been fused can be separated again? Everyone spoke one after another. All of their words drilled into Ning Jiqing's ears. It was as if a bottle of mixed feelings had been knocked over in his heart. His mood was very complicated, and there was also a trace of panic and fear. With this chaos, another wave of fluctuation appeared in the flame in his medicine cauldron. He quickly retracted his gaze and stabilized it again. Suddenly, his gaze fixed. There seemed to be a crack on the pill. He carefully looked at it again to confirm that his eyes were not playing tricks on him. There was indeed a crack on the pill. Ning Jiqing's heart was in a mess, and his mind was blank. The purple sun pill that Chu Liyue refined was a 5th-grade low-grade pill. The spirit-melting pill that he refined was also a 5th-grade low-grade pill. Now that Chu Liyue had successfully reached the last step, from the rich medicinal fragrance, it must be perfect. However, a crack had appeared on his pill. In a hurry, he immediately fused the remaining medicinal herbs into it. At the same time, he crazily urged the flame to burn, trying to complete the crack. Buzz! An even louder vibration came from Chu Liyue's medicine cauldron. Ning Jiqing clenched his teeth and madly poured his force into it again. The crack finally gradually healed. Soon after, a medicinal fragrance also spread out from his thawing spirit pill. Ning Jiqing's pill has also been refined. What kind of pill is that? Why does the smell seem to be slightly worse than Chu Liyue's? It should be because he has just refined the pill, right? He is a genuine 5th-grade celestial physician. How can the pill refined by him be inferior to Chu Liyue, a 4th-grade celestial physician? Ning Jiqing's heart seemed to be blocked by something, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Then, as if he was venting his anger, a stream of force gushed out from his palm and hit the medicine cauldron. Buzz! An even bigger wave surged out in all directions. This movement is obviously bigger than Chu Liyue's. I think Ning Jiqing will definitely win this time. I don't think so. Chu Liyue's move just now was really amazing. Bang! Chu Liyue clapped her hands lightly, and the purple sun pill flew into the jade box that she had already placed beside her. Click! The jade box was sealed. However, the air was still filled with the medicinal fragrance that lingered for a long time. Almost at the same time, Ning Jiqing also finished up and put the pill into his own jade box. Chu Liyue's vision turned black. She could only support the medicine cauldron with one hand and let out a long breath. She closed her eyes and calmed down for a while. In order to refine this pill, she had really exhausted all her strength. At this moment, She did not have any strength left. On the other hand, although Ning Jiqing's expression did not look right overall, he looked much better than Chu Luiyue. Jianghu closed his eyes and finally felt relieved. The corner of his mouth could not help but reveal a smug smile. Even if Chu Luiyue had also refined a 5th-grade pill, with such a big accident in the middle, the product would definitely not be good. Ning Jiqing's pill would definitely be better than hers. This time, she would definitely win. Since both of them have refined their pills, let's decide the winner immediately. Chu Luiyue finished first, let's start with her. He could not wait to see the disappointed looks on the faces of those people in the Chongshu pavilion. Chu Luiyue looked at him with a faint smile. Sure. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 642. The judge walked to the center of the arena. Chu Luiyue stepped forward and handed over the jade box in his hand. The judge opened the box. A strong and fresh medicinal fragrance assailed his nose. His eyes lit up and he picked up the pill. On the round and glossy green pill, there were 5 clear and bright purple lines. The color of the 5th line was much lighter than the previous 4 lines, but the lines were smooth, clean, and pure. It was also of excellent quality. This is indeed a 5th-grade pill. The judge said affirmatively, looking at Chu Luiyue with a hint of admiration. Although it's a low-grade pill, the fragrance is pure and the color is pure. Very good, very good. He said, very good, twice, showing his recognition of Chu Luiyue's strength. The smile on Jianghu's face gradually stiffened. What did he mean? Chu Luiyue's pill seemed to be pretty good? The mess in the middle didn't affect the pill? Chu Luiyue respectfully thanked the judge. The judge glanced at Yuchi Song and smiled. Old Song, you're lucky to have such an outstanding disciple. He was also a celestial physician, so he naturally understood how rare Chu Luiyue's talent was. He heard that Chu Luiyue had chosen the Chongshu Pavilion herself. He had easily taken in a good seedling that others couldn't even ask for. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. Yuchi Song smiled and cupped his hands, finally feeling relieved. When Chu Luiyue refined the purple sun pill, he was surprised and happy, but he didn't dare to be sure. Now, it seemed that the twists and turns in the middle were just scares without danger. Everything was progressing very smoothly. Chu Luiyue had indeed successfully refined the purple sun pill. And it looked very perfect. Then, the judge looked at Ning Jiqing. Ning Jiqing stood in the same place, holding the jade box tightly with both hands. His eyes were empty, and no one knew what he was thinking. Ning Jiqing? The judge called. Only then did Ning Jiqing regain his senses. He held his breath nervously and walked forward with stiff steps. Those who could become the judges of the great sect competition were all top experts of the Tianling dynasty. This person was no exception. I wonder if he'll notice anything. This was his first time doing something like this, so he couldn't help but feel a little guilty. After a few steps, his forehead was already covered in sweat, and his face was a little pale. When he handed the jade box over, his fingers were trembling slightly. This is the thawing spirit pill that I refined. Please examine it. Judge glanced at him. Are you all right? Ning Jiqing shook his head and forced a smile. Junior is fine. Chu Luiyue was standing at the side. Although Ning Jiqing said that he was fine, his eyes were staring at the jade box as if he was worried about something. Chu Luiyue followed his line of sight and looked over thoughtfully. The judge had already opened the box and took out the thawing spirit pill. It was a blue pill with 5 red-veined patterns on it. Just like Chu Luiyue, the 5th pattern on his pill was obviously fainter than the previous ones. The judge examined it carefully. Ning Jiqing's entire body tensed up, and he was extremely tormented. This thawing spirit pill is also a 5th-grade pill. The judge looked hesitant, but in the end he could only smile helplessly. These 2 pills are of the same grade, and they were both refined very successfully. It's really difficult to tell who's better. So this round is a draw. Ning Jiqing's heart relaxed, and his back was immediately drenched in cold sweat, as if he had come back to life. A draw. A draw is good too. It's better than losing. He didn't want to face the same outcome as Xie Lingyang. Everyone else was stunned as well. It's actually a draw. Both sides have been fighting fiercely for so long, but in the end, it's a draw. What kind of result is this? The Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance can't be the 4 major sects, right? This is impossible. A voice filled with anger was heard. Chu Luiyue turned around to look. Zhang Hua was walking over with an agitated expression. This is impossible. Chu Luiyue is a 4th-grade celestial physician, and Ning Jiqing is a 5th grade. He's a grade higher than her. How can the two of them refine pills of the same grade? The judge's expression was slightly cold. Are you questioning my judgment? Zhang Hua choked. No matter how presumptuous he was, he couldn't do something like contradicting the judge in public. But this draw, he absolutely couldn't accept it. There must be something wrong with Chu Luiyue's pill. He pointed the spearhead at Chu Luiyue. When she was refining the pill just now, she once ruined a medicinal ingredient. Everyone at the scene saw it clearly. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to complete the pill, let alone refine a high-grade pill. After hearing this, the judge only felt that it was very laughable. Zhang Hua wasn't a celestial physician, so he said such ignorant words. You're wrong. It's precisely because Chu Luiyue made a mistake in the middle that she was able to successfully refine the pill in the end that it proves her talent and strength. Given a little more time, it wouldn't be a problem for her to completely surpass Ning Jiqing. But Zhang Hua still refused to believe it. He didn't dare to go against the judge directly, so he looked at Chu Luiyue and coldly questioned, Chu Luiyue, if you really have a clear conscience, do you dare to take out the pill and carefully examine it again? Zhang Hua, don't you dare make irresponsible remarks and slander her. Yu Qisong also walked over with a sullen expression. The result of the competition is out. Who are you questioning? Zhang Hua sneered. If there's nothing wrong with her, what's there to be afraid of? If she doesn't dare, it proves that she's guilty. This draw, she doesn't deserve it. Who says I don't dare? Chu Luiyue took a step forward and gave Yu Qisong a comforting look. She smiled and looked at Ning Jiqing. However, if my pill needs to be re-examined, for the sake of fairness, Ning Jiqing's has to be included. The last trace of blood on Ning Jiqing's face faded in an instant. Digression. At 7 p.m., a wave of mobile users. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 643. He blurted out and was about to refuse. But Zhang Hua had already agreed. Let's do it together. When we find out that there's something wrong with your pill, we'll determine that you've lost this match. Chu Luiyue looked at Ning Jiqing meaningfully and nodded with a smile. What if we find out that there's something wrong with Ning Jiqing's pill? Should we also determine that you've lost? Zhang Hua sneered. There's definitely nothing wrong with his pill. Ning Jiqing was a recognized celestial physician genius. He had been a member of the 9-Star Alliance for 3 years. Everyone was well aware of his strength. If Zhang Hua didn't have enough confidence in him, he wouldn't have let him go last. Hearing this, Ning Jiqing's face turned even paler. His body suddenly swayed and he almost fell to the ground. Just. Ning Jiqing, what's wrong with you? If you're not feeling well, go and rest first. Chu Luiyue smiled. Yes. Anyway, this pill will be checked again. We don't need to worry about the process. Ning Jiqing shook his head and finally gathered his courage. He whispered to Zhang Hua. Leader, I think there shouldn't be anything wrong with Chu Luiyue's pill. Why don't we just forget about it? What are you talking about? Zhang Hua looked at him disapprovingly. You're actually speaking up for Chu Luiyue? Do you still remember that you're a disciple of the 9-Star Alliance? This time, we have to investigate. A tie, absolutely impossible. Besides, if you weren't so incompetent, why would there be so much trouble? Ning Jiqing was reprimanded, and his face turned red and white. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. If they really investigated thoroughly, he didn't know if there was anything wrong with Chu Luiyue's pill, but his trick would definitely be discovered. Leader, if it's a tie? If it's a tie, Why don't we have another match? I think there's really no need to investigate this. I believe in Senior's judgment. He tried to use Judge to persuade Jianghu. But now that Jianghu had made up his mind, how could he possibly listen to him? Instead, it was Ning Jiqing's repeated dissuasion that made him somewhat suspicious of him. Under Jianghua's stern gaze, Ning Jiqing's heart gradually sank to the bottom. He lowered his head and clenched his fists tightly in his sleeves. Right now, he could only hope that his pills wouldn't be found out. Yuqi-song looked at Chu Luiyue with heartache. Luyu, are you tired? Why don't you go to the side and rest first? Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and smiled. Thank you, master, but this examination won't take too long. I want to see it with my own eyes. The judge held the 2 pills in his hands. In his left hand was Chu Luiyue's Xiang pill, while in his right hand was Ning Jiqing's Rongling pill. He first took out Chu Luiyue's pill and carefully examined it again. Then he brought it to his nose and sniffed it. He snapped his fingers, and an orange flame instantly appeared on his fingertips. The flames quickly spread and soon enveloped his entire palm. At the same time, it also swallowed the Xiang pill. A moment later, the 5 lines on the Xiang pill suddenly moved. It was like ripples on a calm lake, neat and regular. He withdrew the flame, and the lines on the Xiang pill shook slightly and settled down again. There's nothing wrong with this Xiang pill, the judge said with certainty. Jianghu opened his mouth, and there was still a trace of doubt and disbelief in his eyes. But when the judge examined it just now, he also saw it clearly. Although he was not a celestial physician, he also knew that the purer the medicinal power of the pill, the better the effect of the pill. When burned with fire, the lines on the pill would surge more neatly. There was absolutely no way to fake this. Therefore, this also proved that Chu Luiyue's pill was indeed a real 5th-grade pill. Jianghu frowned and glanced at Chu Luiyue. Could it be that he was hiding his strength? Yuqi-song stepped forward and stared at Jianghu with a gaze as sharp as a knife. What do you have to say now? As the leader of the 9-Star Alliance, you slandered a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion for no reason. Jianghu, shouldn't you apologize? Jianghu was very embarrassed. You want me to apologize to Chu Luiyue? Dream on. I just raised a reasonable doubt. I didn't really do anything. Besides, hasn't everything been confirmed? Elder Song, you are the pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion. You are a respected senior. Why do you have to make such a fuss and be so unforgiving? Yuqi-song was so angry that he laughed. I'm unforgiving? Weren't you the one who started this matter? Everyone here can see clearly what's right and what's wrong. Besides, Lu Yu is my disciple. How dare you bully him in front of me? If I let it go, people will think that the Chongshu Pavilion is easy to bully and that anyone can behave atrociously on our heads. Since the accident that happened more than a year ago in the Chongshu Pavilion, Yuqi-song had been enduring and rarely had such a big conflict with others. His attitude today was so tough that it was obvious that he was serious. Under Wei-Chi-song's cold stare, Jianghua's imposing manner was inexplicably reduced. He coughed and said, "Let's just say that I misunderstood." Without waiting for Yuqi-song to speak, he continued, "But the more important problem now is that this match is a draw, which means that the winner has not been decided between our 2 sections. I think it's time for another match." Today's match was related to the position of the 4 major sections. How could it end in a draw? Jianghu was full of confidence. In any case, the 9-Star Alliance still had a trump card. As for the Chongshu Pavilion, Chang Wanzhou and Chu Luiyue had already gone on stage. Especially Chu Luiyue, it was impossible for him to participate in any other competition. The Chongshu Pavilion didn't have any disciples that could be sent out. With another match, the 9-Star Alliance would definitely win, whether it was a martial artist, Xian master, or celestial physician. Wait a minute. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke and raised his chin with a faint smile. We haven't checked Ning Jiqing's pills yet. President Zhang, you don't have to be so anxious. It won't be too late to talk about this when the results are out. Jianghu sneered. There's definitely no problem with his pills. There's no point in you guys stalling for time. Chu Luiyue smiled without saying anything and looked at the judge. Ning Jiqing didn't say a word. He stood there stiffly and avoided eye contact. The judge returned the purple sun pill to Chu Luiwei and began to check Ning Jiqing's thawing spirit pill. He looked around and sniffed it again. It was the same as before. There was no problem. Then he summoned the orange-red flame in his palm again. The thawing spirit pill was immediately enveloped by the flame. Soon, the patterns on it began to fluctuate. The first few flashes were normal, but the fifth one was slightly slower. Although it was only a moment, it was very obvious because the patterns were fluctuating in different directions. Jianghu's expression suddenly froze. The judge's brows also suddenly furrowed. If this was the case, he moved his fingertips, and the flame suddenly burned more fiercely than before. The 5 patterns on it were even more chaotic. The thawing spirit pill suddenly exploded. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 644. The commotion immediately attracted everyone's attention. Almost everyone around looked over. Some of the people who were standing further away even tiptoed and stuck their heads out to look. What's wrong? What's wrong? What was that sound just now? It seems like Ning Jiqing's pill exploded. Exploded? What does that mean? What else could it mean? There's something wrong with his pill. There must be something wrong during the refining process, causing the pill's medicinal power to be modeled. That's why it exploded in such a situation. Did you see that? There's a big crack on the pill. I didn't expect that the one with the problem wasn't Chu Luiwei, but Ning Jiqing. This time, the 9-Star Alliance has shot themselves in the foot. Originally, they could have gotten a draw, but now it's like this. Isn't this a sure loss? Noises of discussion could be heard from all directions. The 9-Star Alliance members were all stunned. Jianghu was also stunned. Ning Jiqing's face was pale, and he closed his eyes in despair. Sure enough, he still couldn't avoid it. There's something wrong with this pill. Judge withdrew the flame. The soul-thawing pill lay quietly in his palm. A clear crack could be seen on it, and the edge of the crack seemed to be slightly charred. This pill couldn't withstand a single blow, and it didn't last long under his inspection before it was reduced to this state. There should have been a problem with your pill long ago. You forced the last few herbs into it and tried to cover up the mistake, right? Judge's expression was serious as he asked in a deep voice. Ning Jiqing's lips trembled. He didn't dare to say yes or no. Seeing this, what else did the crowd not understand? He had been guilty for a long time. No wonder he kept dissuading Jianghu. It turned out that he wanted to avoid exposing himself. Unfortunately, Jianghu was determined to trample on Chongshu Pavilion. He was so stubborn that he didn't even listen to half a word. In the end, they pushed themselves into the water. Looking at the damaged pill in his hand, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. If it was really because of his mistake that the outcome of this match was mixed up, then he would really be ashamed and wouldn't know how to face the crowd. He didn't notice it the first time because he wasn't meticulous enough and Ning Jiqing's disguise was too good. Now that he thought about it, he really blushed in shame. Thinking of this, he apologized to Yuqi Song and Chu Luiwei. I'm really sorry. I almost misjudged and caused you to miss out on victory. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. You're too polite. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have known that things would turn out this way. Many thanks to you. The judge looked at Jianghu and said ambiguously, if you want to thank someone, you should thank Alliance Master Zhang. If it wasn't for his insistence on a new inspection, I wouldn't have discovered these problems. I was almost fooled by them. These words were like a stick that fiercely hit Jianghu's head. His vision went black and his body swayed. He almost lost his balance. He had seen the scene just now clearly, and he had also heard what they had said clearly. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind, and it was wildly reverberating. There was something wrong with Ning Jiqing's pill. Ning Jiqing had lost. The 9-Star Alliance had lost. The position of the 4 major sects still belonged to the Chongshu Pavilion. All their previous efforts had been in vain. He abruptly turned around and kicked Ning Jiqing out. Look at what you've done. Accompanied by the crisp sound of bones breaking, Ning Jiqing fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Alliance Master? I know my mistake. Jianghu still hadn't vented his anger. He quickly stepped forward, grabbed Ning Jiqing's collar, and lifted him up. What's the use of knowing your mistake? Ning Jiqing, I think you're tired of living. Bang! Ning Jiqing was thrown to the ground again. He was in so much pain that he couldn't stand up. The judge finally opened his mouth and said indifferently, Alliance Master Zhang, what are you doing? He tried to hide the fact that there was something wrong with his pill and tried to get away with it. However, he's still a disciple of the 9-Star Alliance. It doesn't seem appropriate for you to be so ruthless, does it? Zhang Hua's chest heaved violently. Inappropriate? He even had the urge to kill Ning Jiqing now. He took a deep breath and suppressed the flames of anger in his heart. Hurry up and take him away. What a disgrace. Immediately, 2 people rushed up and carried Ning Jiqing away. The onlookers looked at each other. Although Ning Jiqing was in the wrong, Zhang Hua doing so was also a little too heartless. No matter what, he was still one of the outstanding disciples of the 9-Star Alliance. Today, he lost to Chu Liwei by accident, and he was treated like this? It was clear that Zhang Hua was selfish and ruthless. If such a sect really became one of the 4 major sects, it wouldn't be a good thing. The judge looked around and said in a low voice, the 9th Celestial Physician Competition, Chu Liwei wins. At the same time, after combining all 27 matches, the Chongshu Pavilion is the winner. The 9-Star Alliance has failed the challenge, and the Chongshu Pavilion continues to occupy the position of one of the 4 major sects. He cupped his hands at Yuchi Song and smiled. Congratulations, old Song. Yuchi Song returned the greeting, but she was still in a dream. Won just like that? Our position was saved? That's great. Lu Xiao and the others reacted for a moment and immediately shouted in joy and excitement. Little junior sister. You're amazing. Everyone ran over and surrounded Chu Liwei and Yuchi Song with big smiles on their faces. Little junior sister won. We won. Previously, someone said that our Chongshu Pavilion couldn't take it anymore and wanted to replace it. In the end, didn't we still lose? That's right. If you don't have the ability, don't think so much. Otherwise, you'll only become a laughingstock. Tisk, if I were from the 9-Star Alliance, I really wouldn't have the face to continue staying here. My face really hurts. It was lively here, but the 9-Star Alliance's side was miserable. It was completely different from the arrogance and presumptuousness they had when they came. Who would have thought that things would develop like this? It had been fine all along. In the end, the Chongshu Pavilion actually won the last 4 matches. They turned defeat into victory. In fact, 3 of the matches were won by Chu Liwei alone. What a monster! The commotion here also attracted the attention of the other major sections. When they found out that the Chongshu Pavilion relied on Chang Wanzhou and Chu Liwei to turn the tide and finally retain their position, everyone had different reactions. Looks like Chu Liwei didn't win first place in the Wanzheng competition by luck. I don't know what kind of luck the Chongshu Pavilion had to be able to come back from the dead. The 9-Star Alliance's efforts were in vain. With these 2 seedlings, the Chongshu Pavilion will have a lot to look forward to in the future. Digression. Let's continue after dinner. There are still 2 updates today, so everyone can watch them together later. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 645. Alliance Master, what should we do now? The atmosphere on the 9-Star Alliance's side was tense. Almost no one dared to speak. Only an old man mustered up the courage to step forward and speak carefully. Zhang Hua clenched his teeth. They had already lost. What else could they do? If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have made such an unnecessary move. They would have restarted the match. But there was no medicine for regret in this world. Let's go. He waved his sleeves fiercely, turned around and left quickly. The 9-Star Alliance hurriedly followed, leaving dejectedly under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes. After leaving the crowd, Jianghu turned around to look. Chu Luiwei raised her head as if she sensed something and raised her eyebrows slightly. Jianghu said hatefully, "Chu Luiwei, just you wait. You won't be so smug every time." Chu Luiwei smiled faintly, her eyes curved. "It's always good to be smug. It's better than being disappointed every time." Jianghu was so choked that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Wrapped in anger, he quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Before long, the 9-Star Alliance members had all left Square Ravine. Only countless sighs from the crowd were left. The matches of the other 3 groups also ended one after another. Unsurprisingly, the winners were still the same few groups. After going around in circles, the positions of the 4 major sects were still occupied by the same 4 groups. However, the 3 groups from Holy Flame Palace who lost the match weren't as flustered and exasperated as the 9-Star Alliance. They had long known that with the foundation and strength of their own sects, there was no way they could be compared to those from Dragon Teeth Mountain. It was normal for them to lose. And the Chongshu Pavilion, which they had thought was bound to lose, actually turned the tables at the last moment and stabilized its position. This was very surprising to them. At the same time, they also felt somewhat fortunate. Even the 9-Star Alliance lost, let alone them. Fortunately, they weren't the ones competing against the Chongshu Pavilion today. Otherwise, they would really be as humiliated as the 9-Star Alliance. But this also gave them a warning. The current Chongshu Pavilion seemed to be an empty shell, but in fact, they couldn't underestimate it. A lean camel is still bigger than a horse. With the painful lesson of the 9-Star Alliance, it was better for them to behave themselves. The great sect meeting ended just like that. The news quickly spread throughout Xiling City. Among them, what happened between the Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance was a hot topic. In particular, the news of Chang Wanzhou defeating his opponent in 2 moves and Chu Luiwei fighting 3 matches in a row and turning the tide of the battle spread like wildfire. Those who had previously thought that Chu Luiwei had won first place in the Wanzheng competition by luck had also changed their views. Chu Luiwei was already quite famous in West Hill, and now he was even more famous. For a moment, the limelight was unparalleled. In the palace, Huayang Hall, 2 palace maids were standing under an osmanthus tree, whispering to each other. "Hey, do you think that Chu Luiwei is really that powerful? How can he win 3 matches in a row if he's not powerful?" To a large extent, the Chongshu Pavilion was able to maintain its position as one of the 4 major sects because of him. Didn't they say that he came from an ordinary background and his cultivation base wasn't high? Who knows if he's hiding his cultivation base? Even if he isn't, he's indeed very powerful. When she had just arrived, she had already defeated a rank 5 warrior as a rank 3 warrior, and more than once. Also, how long has he been in West Hill? Less than 2 months, right? He broke through from a rank 3 warrior to the peak of rank 4. I really can't be envious. That's true, not to mention 3 cultivators, all of them are very outstanding. There aren't many all-rounders like him in West Hill. Back then, Her Highness was also like this. "Shu, are you courting death? How dare you mention that person? Be careful not to let the 3rd princess hear." One of the palace maids hurriedly patted the other woman's arm and said anxiously. The woman who was hit hugged her arm in pain and said disapprovingly, "The 3rd princess went to Qingfeng Hall today and won't be back for 2 hours. What are you talking about?" A faint but cold female voice suddenly came from behind the 2 of them. The 2 women hurriedly turned around and immediately knelt down in horror when they saw who it was. Long live the 3rd princess. Sheng Wanwan was dressed in a gorgeous palace dress. Her hair was combed and her makeup was exquisite. Her posture was noble. Chan Yi was standing by the side supporting her. "Just now, I seem to have heard that you were talking about my eldest sister?" Sheng Wanwan's gaze swept across their faces as she asked indifferently. "This servant knows his mistake. 3rd princess, please forgive us this time." The 2 palace maids kept kowtowing and admitting their mistakes. Their foreheads smashed heavily on the stone road, and soon, blood was seen. Sheng Wanwan lowered her eyes and looked at her freshly dyed nail polish without any expression on her face. It's a serious crime to talk about a master in private. Furthermore, you're talking about my eldest sister, so your crime is even more unforgivable. Chani, this servant is here. Chase them out of the palace and forbid them from entering again. Yes. The two palace maids were greatly alarmed by these words. They cried as they begged. Third princess, we truly know our mistake. Please don't chase us out. They had served in Huayang Palace for quite some time and had heard many rumors. For example, those palace maids who had been chased out of the palace because they had offended the third princess didn't even leave the palace gates. They had silently disappeared from the palace. It went without saying what awaited them. This was why the two of them were frantically begging for mercy. Chan Yi shot a glance at two nearby eunuchs. Soon, several people rushed over and dragged the two palace maids away with their mouths covered. The cries gradually faded. Chan Yi said, Third princess, don't worry. Don't worry, third princess. They will never appear before you again. It was only then that a trace of impatience appeared in Shang Guanwan's eyes. Have them clean up. Don't worry. Shang Guanwan began to walk toward her sleeping quarters. After taking a few steps, she finally couldn't help but ask, what happened? What's going on with the assembly? Chani gave her a simple explanation of what had happened. The palace had never participated in such matters, but they knew everything that they should know. As she listened, Shang Guanwan's expression gradually turned cold. That's about it. Now, everyone in Xiling City is talking about it. Chani said. Shang Guanwan suddenly sneered. She's getting more and more powerful. She's only been in Xiling for a month, and she's really in the limelight. Chan Yi lowered her head and didn't say anything. I didn't know that she was a triple cultivator. What a coincidence. Could it be that everyone with the word "you" in their name is like this? Chu Luiwei was quite similar to her short-lived elder sister, whether it was her talent, name, or appearance. As a result, every time she thought about it, she would feel as if a thorn had pierced her heart. Speaking of which, even I am ashamed of my inferiority to such an outstanding talent. Chani said, How can a lowly person like her be mentioned in the same breath as you, third princess? Shang Guanwan walked to the door of the bedroom, and the moment she stepped in, she suddenly stopped. Go and invite her into the palace. I admire her very much and want to invite her to the palace. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 646. The third princess invited me into the palace? Chu Liwei looked up in surprise, and her face was filled with shock. The third princess heard that Miss Chu turned the tide at the sect competition and is very impressed with your outstanding strength. Therefore, she wants to invite you into the palace for a chat. Chani crossed her hands over her abdomen and said word by word. Even in this Chongshu pavilion, she was still as respectful, serious, and well-behaved as she was in the palace. Many thoughts flashed through Chu Liyue's mind. She was wondering how to get close to those people back then when Shang Guanwan took the initiative to invite her into the palace. It was obvious that she didn't do this out of so-called admiration, but because of another motive. Actually, when they were in Thousand View Garden, Chu Luiwei had purposely aroused Shang Guanwan's suspicion. Every frown and smile of hers was exactly like how she was in the past. It wasn't just to make Shang Guanwan uneasy, but also to plant a seed of suspicion in her heart. She didn't expect that Shang Guanwan would be unable to sit still after a month. The sect competition had just ended the day before yesterday, and Shang Guanwan had sent Chani over early this morning. Her patience didn't seem to be as good as before. It's Lu Liyue's honor to receive the third princess's sincere invitation. Chu Liyue smiled faintly. Her face was filled with curiosity and excitement. She seemed to be overwhelmed by the favor, but was trying her best to control herself. May I know the time set by the third princess? If it's convenient for Miss Chu, please follow this servant back to the palace today. Today? Chu Liyue seemed to be hesitant. Yes, I don't have anything to do today, but isn't it inappropriate to enter the palace without making any preparations? Chani's gaze quickly swept across Chu Liyue's face. A trace of disdain appeared in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She was still polite. Miss Chu, you don't have to worry about that. The third princess thinks highly of you, so she naturally won't care about this. The worry on Chu Liyue's face dissipated, and she revealed a relieved and happy smile. Then I'm relieved. I'll have to trouble you. Miss Chu, please. Chu Liyue had just walked out of the main entrance of the hall with Chani when Yi Ranran and Chang Wanzhou, who had been waiting nervously outside, looked over. In fact, the door wasn't closed, so they could clearly hear the conversation between Chu Liyue and Wang Yao from the outside. Yi Ranran stepped forward and asked hesitantly, "What's the matter? Lu Yu, are you really going to the palace?" Chu Liyue smiled. That's right, the third princess personally sent someone to invite him, which shows her sincerity. I'll be right back. Don't worry. Shangguan Wan's move was so public. Even if she really wanted to do something, she wouldn't choose this time. Shangguan Wan was smart enough to do that. Yi Ranran quickly glanced at Chani. For some reason, she felt that there was something wrong with this palace maid. Even though she didn't look like there was anything wrong with her, there was something about her that made people uncomfortable and uneasy. All right, come back soon then. Chu Liyue smiled and pinched her round face. Got it. This little girl thought that she had hidden it very well, but in reality, her thoughts were written all over her face. She looked at Chang Wanzhou. The two of them looked at each other. Chu Liyue shook her head slightly. She knew that Chang Wanzhou wanted to go with her. However, that was obviously not appropriate. Little Zhou, remember to use the pills I gave you previously. I'll take your pulse when I get back. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips and finally nodded. At that moment, Yuqi Song suddenly walked over. Greetings, Pavilion Master Yuqi. Chani bowed respectfully. Yuqi Song smiled. Lu Yu, I'll go down the mountain with you. Chu Liyue asked curiously. You're going to the palace too? Yuqi Song shook his head. No. I'm going to the Jianghu residence. Chani's eyes flickered. Chu Liyue immediately understood. Yuqi Song was planning to continue investigating Jiang Yuqing. Whether it was because of the Chaos Essence Gravel or the Zither Room, he seemed to have already determined that Jiang Yuqing had done something and was planning to bite him to death. I'm afraid Jiang Yuqing won't have an easy time in the future. She smiled and looked at Chani. Miss Chani, you don't mind if Master goes down the mountain with us, right? Chani said. Of course not. Pavilion Master Yuqi, Miss Chu, please. After the three of them left Qingyuan Mountain, they walked together for a while before finally parting ways. Chu Liyue and Chani headed towards the palace while Yuqi Song went to the Jiang residence. Walking on the wide and clean imperial street in front of the palace gate, they looked up and saw the majestic imperial city. The dignified and solemn palace stood in front of them. The bright yellow eaves shimmered under the sunlight. The fine eaves fluttered, and 9 beasts squatted on them. Noble, solemn, and sacred. Chu Liyue's expression was calm, but her heart was in turmoil. This was the place she was most familiar with. She was born here and died here. It had once shone with boundless radiance, glorious and noble. She had also been tortured and bled inch by inch. His entire life was buried here with unforgettable pain. Now, she was finally back. She would finally step through this threshold again. Chani took a few steps and realized that Chu Liyue wasn't following her. She turned around and saw her staring at the palace gate and palace in a daze. She frowned slightly as impatience flashed across her eyes. Miss Chu? We should go in. Chu Liyue retracted his gaze. His black jade-like eyes were deep and bright. She nodded slightly and walked forward. Digression, that's all for today. Update at noon tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 647. Chu Liyue followed Chani through the door at the side and headed straight for Huayang Palace. It was already late winter, and the wind was cold. When it blew on one's face, it felt like a knife was cutting. Suddenly, Chu Liyue felt a chill between her brows. She looked up. Pure white snowflakes were falling. It was snowing. The two of them walked forward. When they reached Huayang Palace, there was already a thin layer of snow on the smooth limestone floor. Seeing Chani return, the palace servants bowed. Many people's gazes landed on Chu Luiyue. They had already received news that the third princess would invite Chu Luiyue over today. This person must be the one. Previously, they had only heard rumors. Now that they saw her in person, they realized that those rumors were somewhat credible. At the very least, her peerlessly beautiful appearance and outstanding temperament were indeed worthy of her name. Chani walked forward. Third princess, young Lady Chu is here. A gentle voice came from inside. Why aren't you inviting her in? Chani bowed to Chu Luiyue. Young Lady Chu, please. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and followed her in. Since a long time ago, Huayang Palace had been Shangguan Wan's sleeping palace. Among the many palaces in the palace, Huayang Palace was very inconspicuous. Whether it was its size, location, or construction, it was at most average. Shangguan Wan's birth mother had a low status, and she was not valued. When she was young, she had been bullied a lot. Later on, Chu Luiyue saw how pitiful she was and sympathized with her. She often spoke up for her in front of her father. Shangguan Wan's situation improved, and she moved to Huayang Palace. Although Huayang Palace could not compare to Chu Luiyue's sleeping palace, it was already a great improvement for the Shangguan Wan back then. Chu Luiyue thought that she would move to another place after taking power. She did not expect that she would still be here. However, Huayang Palace had been renovated. Judging from the surrounding scenery and decorations, it must have cost a lot of money. A graceful figure walked out from behind the screen. She had a pretty face and a smile on her lips. She seemed to have a hint of spring in her eyes, but there was a hint of nobility and alienation between her brows. It was Shangguan Wan. Chu Luiyue glanced at her and curtsied. Luyu greets third princess. Shangguan Wan stepped forward to support him and said with a smile, "Get up quickly. Today, this imperial concubine invited you here because there are some matters that this imperial concubine wishes to consult you on. There is no need to be so courteous." Although she said this, her shoulders were straight and she was still 3 steps away from Chu Luiyue. She didn't have the slightest intention of asking her to be excused. Chu Luiyue had seen such petty tricks too many times in the past, so he didn't care at all. After curtsying, he stood up and smiled at Shangguan Wan. "Thank you, third princess." Shangguan Wan was stunned for a moment, and her movements froze for a moment. The last time they met, there was still some distance between them, so she couldn't see her clearly. Now that she was standing so close, she could see her face clearly. This face. When she smiles, it really looks like. Shangguan Wan felt a trace of disgust in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She only smiled and sat down on the main seat. "Miss Chu, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat." Chan Yi walked behind Shangguan Wan to serve her. Chu Luiyue didn't stand on ceremony. After thanking her, she sat down at the side. Others might be afraid of Shangguan Wan's identity, but she wasn't. Shangguan Wan was speechless when she saw her being so carefree. After pausing for a moment, she found an excuse to speak. "Miss Chu, I've heard about the sect competition. Miss Chu's talent is really enviable." Chu Luiyue smiled. "Compared to the third princess, what is Lu Yu's talent? I heard that you were already a rank 7 warrior 2 years ago. How can Lu Yu compare?" Shangguan Wan's heart felt stifled. She was indeed a rank 7 warrior 2 years ago, but ever since that incident, her Yuan meridian had been destroyed, and no matter what method she used, she couldn't recover. She was no different from a cripple. Chu Luiyue's words were like a stab to her heart. She forced a smile and took a sip of tea to hide the coldness on her face. Chu Luiyue had a faint smile on her face, and her expression was sincere. That's right, there were only 3 people who knew about her physical condition, including herself. How could Chu Luiyue know? "My eldest sister passed away more than a year ago. I've been sad for a long time and fell seriously ill. Until now, I still can't sleep well and inevitably neglect my cultivation. I've embarrassed myself in front of Miss Chu." Chu Luiyue raised her brows slightly. The third princess's eldest sister should be the former crown princess, right? It seems that you have a very deep relationship with her. Every time you mention her, you feel very sad. Of course. I've been with my eldest sister since I was young. Our relationship is naturally incomparable. Shang Guanwan put down the teacup and made a soft sound as she looked at Chu Liwei. Miss Chu, please don't take it to heart. It's just that you look a little similar to my eldest sister, so every time I see you, I think of her. But speaking of which, Miss Chu seems to have heard some rumors about my eldest sister? Chu Liuyue's expression was normal. Actually, I've only heard a few words from young Master Jian. Shang Guanwan's heart skipped a beat. Oh, Jian Fengqi? What did he say to you? Chu Liuyue smiled carelessly. When young Master Jian first met me, he also said that I looked a little similar to an old friend of his. He also mentioned a few small things that happened between them. I only found out that the person he was talking about was the crown princess after I came to West Hill. Chu Liuyue didn't hesitate to push the blame to Jian Fengqi. Shang Guanwan would definitely be suspicious of Jian Fengqi, but she couldn't possibly confront Jian Fengqi because of this. In the past, Jian Fengqi and Shang Guanwan's relationship wasn't bad, but now. Chu Liuyue didn't know what happened between the two, but it was obvious that their relationship wasn't as good as it used to be. Jian Fengqi had always been carefree and self-centered. If he hated someone, he definitely wouldn't be nice to them. It was like this for the former Shang Guanyu, and it was naturally even more so for Shang Guanwan. It's not strange that he would tell you this because he always had a good relationship with my elder sister. After she passed away, he also grieved for a long time. Shang Guanwan looked down and said slowly, "It's fine." Chu Liuyue was stunned. Jian Fengqi grieved for her? How was that possible? Back then, the two of them hated each other. Jian Fengqi would go against her whenever he had the chance and caused her a lot of trouble. She didn't expect. Forget it, let's not talk about that. I heard that you came from country Yaochen outside Heaven's Canopy, right? Chu Liuyue nodded. Shang Guanwan looked at her, smiling faintly as she asked in a seemingly unintentional manner. She asked casually, I heard that you were born with a damaged Yuan meridian and only officially stepped onto the path of cultivation a year ago. I'm a little curious, how did your Yuan meridian recover? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 648. So it was because of this. Chu Liuyue sneered in her heart. That's right. Back then, she had destroyed Shang Guanwan's Yuan meridian while she was at it. Even now, she had yet to recover. How could she not be anxious? The power of the Tianjing Yuan meridian was extremely terrifying. The damage it caused was permanent. Not to mention Shang Guanwan, even Shang Guanyu at her peak might not be able to do it. Shang Guanwan did not dare to publicize this matter, but she definitely had a celestial physician she trusted in private. More than a year had passed, but she still had not made any progress. It was obvious that she had tried everything to no avail. If she had not been forced into a corner, Shang Guanwan would not have summoned her to the palace in such a hurry. So this is what the third princess wanted to ask. Actually, this matter is a long story. Chu Liuyue narrowed her eyes as if recalling something. I was indeed born with a damaged Yuan meridian. I had seen countless celestial physicians, but none of them could cure me. Until one day I was kidnapped and brought to the forest outside the imperial capital. There, I accidentally met a mysterious person. I did not know who that person was, nor did I see his face. The other party only gave me a pill and a prescription. After I ate the pill, I followed the prescription to get the medicine and took it on time. Not long after, the Yuan meridian in my body returned to normal. After that, I wanted to find that mysterious person and thank him personally, but I was unable to find him. Gradually, I put this matter aside. After hearing this, Shang Guanwan's first reaction was disbelief. That's it? Chu Liuyue smiled and nodded. That's it. Shang Guanwan's eyes turned cold. Could it be such a coincidence that when Chu Liuyue was being plotted against, she was saved by a peak expert? That person had met her by chance, but had taken the initiative to help her recover her Yuan meridian? And after this matter, That person disappeared without a trace? Then what was that person after? Shangguan didn't believe that there was such a thing as a free lunch in this world. She did not believe a single word of Chu Liuyue's explanation. But this kind of thing, other than the person involved, no one else knew. If Chu Liyue was unwilling to say anything, then there was nothing he could do. Such an opportunity is hard to come by. Miss Chu has truly met a benefactor. Shangguan sized up Chu Liyue and said in an ambiguous manner, "Not only did he help you recover your Yuan Meridian, he even raised your Yuan Meridian to the Earth class. Who knows how many people will be envious of you if news of this gets out." Chu Liyue suddenly smiled. "Many people in country Yaochen have asked me about this experience. I didn't expect the third princess to be interested as well. This consort has seen a few people whose Yuan meridians were damaged by external forces and later recovered. However, this consort has never seen someone who was born with a damaged Yuan meridian and was still able to walk the path of cultivation. It was inevitable that this consort was curious and asked a few more questions. As Shangguan spoke, she sighed. To be able to do this, he must be someone with great divine abilities. If there's a chance, this consort would really like to meet that person. Chu Liyue smiled sincerely. To be honest, I want to meet that person more than anyone else and thank him in person. Unfortunately, that person comes and goes without a trace. There's no way to find him. Shangguan felt a little vexed. Only Chu Liyue knew what was going on. If she did not want to say it, who could force her? Now that she was in the limelight in Xiling, her every move was being watched. It was even more difficult to touch her. At this moment, a report suddenly came from outside the door. Third Princess, Lord Zhuo is here. Shangguan was a little surprised. Why is Lord Zhuo here at this time? Chani reminded her softly. Your Highness, have you forgotten that it's Lord Zhuo's turn to take His Majesty's pulse today? You said last time that Lord Zhuo would come and talk to you about His Majesty's condition after taking his pulse in the future. Chu Liuyue's hand on the armrest slightly curled up. Oh, this consort has indeed forgotten. Please ask him to wait in the side hall for a moment. This consort will come immediately. As Shangguan spoke, she looked at Chu Liyue. This consort has something to take care of. I'll have to trouble Miss Chu to wait here for a moment. If you find it boring, you can also have Chani bring you around Huayang Hall. Chu Liyue immediately said, Third Princess, please. Shangguan got up and left. Soon she arrived outside the hall. Chu Liyue looked up and happened to see Zhuo Mingxi's figure standing outside. Lord Zhuo, why are you here so early today? This was Shangguan's voice. Zhuo Mingxi bowed and said, This humble subject's jade pendant is done, so I came early to collect it. An idea suddenly popped into Chu Liyue's mind. Jade pendant? The jade pendant he was talking about, could it be? That's good. This jade pendant is a symbol of status. Lord Zhuo, please be careful in the future and don't lose it again. Third Princess, you're right. Follow this consort. The two walked into the side hall, and the voices completely disappeared. Chu Liyue was shocked. So the jade pendant that accidentally fell from Jian Fengxi's body that day was Jiang Lizuo's. Jiang Lizuo said that he lost it. Then, did Jian Fengxi accidentally pick it up after he lost it, or did Jian Fengxi deliberately take it from him? Thinking back to the faint ambergris on Jian Fengxi's body that day, he had clearly entered the palace. And it was very likely that he had entered father's bedchamber. But why would he do that? Chu Liyue felt like there was a cloud of fog in front of her. She couldn't see clearly. She stood up. Chani immediately asked, Miss Chu, do you want to look around? Chu Liyue turned around and smiled. Will it be too troublesome? Chani said respectfully. You're too kind, Miss Chu. Since the third princess has spoken, you don't have to worry so much. Why don't I bring you to the back garden? Chu Liyue nodded slightly. Thank you. The two then walked out of the hall. After they left, Chu Liyue glanced in the direction of the side hall, seemingly unintentionally. So that's Lord Zhuo Mingxi. I heard that he's a very powerful celestial physician. Chani seemed to have unintentionally used her body to block Chu Liyue's line of sight. Her expression was polite and cold. Lord Zhua is an imperial physician. Naturally, his medical skills are superb. Why, is Miss Chu interested in this? Chu Luiwei didn't seem to notice the warning in her words. She smiled. That's not it. It's just that I've heard from my master that there are a few imperial physicians in the palace who are very powerful. That's why I admire them. I didn't expect to be fortunate enough to meet them today. Chani glanced at her, the doubts in her heart gradually dispelled. She had heard that Chu Luiwei was also a celestial physician, so her words sounded normal. The back garden is over there. Miss Chu, please follow me. With that, Chani walked in front and led the way. Chu Luiwei followed. On the other side, after Shangguan Wan and Zhua Mingxi entered the side hall, they went straight to the point. Lord Zhua, how's father's condition? Are there any signs of him waking up? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.